Alright guys, welcome back. We're going to be adding our animations for our idle and our run. From our warrior sprite sheet, we should have the idle and the run sprites all cut out already. We're going to start by making an animation. So we're going to select the first and then shift select the last frame of that animation, and then you can right click and go to create and then choose animation. That's going to create a new animation for us. We can call this player idle. And we're going to do the same thing for our run animation. Alternatively, you can hold command and select all those. Make sure you select them in order if you do it this way, just in case something gets out of order. And right click create animation. And this is our player run. Select those guys, and we need to make a new folder. So go back to your root assets folder, right click create a folder. These are going to be our animations. And then go take those out of your art or your other assets folder and drop them over there. To start applying these on our player character, we need to have an animator component. So click on add component, start typing in animation or animator. Make sure you get the OR, not animation. And then for this, we need an animator controller. It's going to go in this box. So back over in that animations folder we created, right click, create animator controller. And we can just call this player AC for animation controller. And then go apply that, drop that into the controller component. And if you double click on that, it's going to open the animator window. And here is where we create the states that hold our animations. So anywhere in the middle here, I'm going to right click and create an empty state. The orange one means that is our default state. That is where our animations all start from. So this is going to be my idle animation. The motion is the animation that you want to apply. So I'm going to click on that little target there, and that's going to be my idle. Another thing we need to do before we go any further is we need to loop these animations. We want them to keep playing. So from the project window, select each one and put a check next to loop time. And so now if we play, we should just have our player standing there idling. Excellent. But if we move, then she still just stands there. So let's get her animating. We're going to create another state. This is going to be our run, so make sure you select that, choose run. And then we need to have transitions going both from and to idle and run. So I would start by clicking on idle, then right click, choose make transition, and you get this cool arrow that follows your mouse. And you can click on the run state. We have a transition going to there. I'm going to select that transition. That's an arrow that you can actually click on. And we need to have a condition for this to switch to run. And so that condition we need to set up in parameters over here in the animator window. We click on this plus, and this is going to be a float value. I'm just going to call this speed. And this is just another set of parameters that we can use to run our animations. All right, so back over to the inspector with that transition selected. In my conditions, I'm going to add one, and this is going to be if speed is greater than some small number. Usually 0.1 is small enough. And then I need to transition back when that speed is less than some small number. You don't want to choose 0 just because sometimes it takes a while to actually get down to 0. So I'm going to right click, make transition, go back to idle, and then pretty much just the opposite. Select that, the transition back to idle, give it a condition that speed is actually less than 0.1. And so right now this isn't going to do much because our script isn't set up for it yet. So let's go open our script from our player. And then we need to access that animation. And to get to those parameters, in the animator, we have to make a reference to that component. So up here under component references, this will also be private. It's an animator, and we can just call this anim, just to keep that short. Very similarly to our rigid body, in start, we need to set anim equal to that component. And then down in the move function, we'll set the value of that speed component. We're going to set it to the x value of our rigid body's velocity. But right now, that velocity can be either positive or negative. But the speed from our animator always needs to be positive, because that parameter is only if we get greater than some small number. And if we get less than some small number, if we tell it to be negative, then it's always going to go back to idle. And so what we're going to do is we'll say anim.setFloat. In parentheses, we need to give it the name of our parameter. So just in quotation marks, type in exactly like you did over here. So I have a capital S speed, and then there's a comma, and then what you set that value to. And so if we use absolute value, that will always be positive. So to get to an absolute value, we use mathf.abs for absolute value. And then in another set of parentheses, that's where we give it the value that we want the absolute value of. So we'll say rb.velocity.x. We can save that. And now we can go check this out. It would also help if we actually gave run the animation that it needs. So assign your player run to that run states motion. And now when we start running, we go that way. But now we have a new problem. Sure, we run forward, and actually it takes a second to stop when we actually stop holding the button. But then she does the moonwalk and runs backwards. So one thing to fix after we exit play mode is in these transitions, there's a setting for has exit time. And we don't want really either of these animations to finish before transitioning to the next one. That's what exit time does. So if we tell it to not have exit time, then no matter what happens when that condition is met, it will transition to the next state. So on both of those transitions, we'll turn it off. And then also under settings, there's a duration for this transition, and we want this to happen really fast. So if we take this transition duration, drop that down to 0 for both of these as well, then it'll start looking a lot snappier. All right, so the next thing is we actually want our character to be able to turn around. And the Sprite Renderer has a way for us to do that. There's this flip value, and we can flip X or Y. And so let's go in to our script again, and we're going to add another component. So up here under component references, we have another private. This one's going to be a Sprite Renderer. And just like we did with rigid body, which just said RB, so Sprite Renderer can just be SR. Same thing down here in start. We'll say SR equals get component, and it's going to be our Sprite Renderer. And then also back down and move, before we set our float here for the animator, we're going to say if X is greater than 0, then we're going to say our sr.flipx equals false. So this x value is the same float x that we're getting here from our get access raw. So if that's positive, if it's greater than 0, we don't want to flip our sprite. But then if it is negative, we'll say else if, and our condition for that is then if x is less than 0, then we set this, I'm going to copy it, equal to true. So if we save that, then our character should be turning around. So we can run right, and if we hit left, we turn around, and we run left. That animation's all flipped around for us. But now, same thing if we jump and hit space, then that doesn't work. So in the next video, we will set up those jump animations so that she's just not just running through the air. So join me then.